Let's talk now about inventory write-downs. What the heck is an inventory write-down? All right. So, an inventory write-down is basically an impairment of inventory. Let's say we're in the mid 2000s, right? And we're the company BlackBerry. Remember those old smartphones, Blackberries, right? They had the keyboards on them, right? The full QWERTY keyboard, QWERTY, right? QWERTY. It's like the top row of the keyboard, QWERTY, right? So these Blackberries had the QWERTY keyboard. It was a physical keyboard. It had like a little mouse thing that you could use, right? So we have these Blackberries. We're this company BlackBerry. We're making these phones. They dominated the market. They were like the smartphone of choice, okay? There was a couple others, but they were kind of niche products. But BlackBerry was that was a smartphone. If it was, you transport it back to 2002, 2003, 2004, and you were looking at what people were using, what types of phones people were using, they were using Blackberries, all right? And so Blackberries were a very popular product. They were a very popular product across, companies. Like companies would give their employees Blackberries. So that's where you would see a lot of people using Blackberries. People didn't have smartphones for personal use. It was mostly for work use. And they would use Blackberries. How many times did I say Blackberries so far? All right. So let's say we're talking about Blackberries. It's late 2000s, and 2007 comes. Steve Jobs comes out for their investor presentation, and he steps on stage and he introduces the iPhone, right? 2007, brand new iPhone comes out. And it was like, whoa, like, oh my God, this is a smartphone that has this incredible display. It doesn't have a physical keyboard. You can listen to music. You can take photos with it. It had a decent camera. It had notes. You could take notes on it. And it had like all these great applications that nobody's ever seen before on a phone. And it was touchscreen. It didn't have a physical keyboard. It was like groundbreaking, right? It changed everything, right? It changed everybody now. Before, smartphones were just for like corporate employees. It was for work. Now everybody had a smartphone for personal use, okay? So it was like a dramatic change. 2007 comes along. Everybody switched from using Blackberries that had the physical keyboard, small screen, to these new iPhones that had no physical keyboard, huge screen. And it was like, it happened overnight. Like everybody had smartphones right away. So let's think about BlackBerry, right? They had inventory of smartphones, and maybe it cost them like $500-$600 to make each unit of the smartphone. And now the iPhone's out, and nobody wants a BlackBerry anymore. I mean, it's kind of a sad story, right? BlackBerry, it was a decent product, but then, they just got disrupted by Apple. Apple just created this killer product that it was a BlackBerry killer. It killed BlackBerry, this iPhone that came out, right? So BlackBerry had all these units of inventory. Maybe they cost $500-$600 per unit, and now all of a sudden, nobody wants them. They have to sell them at a huge discount to get rid of them. Maybe they have to sell them for $100 when previously they could sell them for $1,000. So what does BlackBerry do in this situation? Think about BlackBerry's inventory. If BlackBerry's inventory is based on $500 or $600 per unit, right? That's how they're recording the asset in the balance sheet. They're saying it's worth $500 or $600 per unit. Now Apple's iPhone comes out, and now you can't even sell that inventory for $100, right? So does it make sense to continue in your balance sheet to list that inventory at $500 or $600 per unit when you can't even sell it at a markup for $100? No. So GAAP says, no, you can't. You got to update the value of your inventory. It's not worth what you think it is. You can't leave it at that value. Even though you paid that cost, it's not really worth that much. Because think about the definition of an asset. An asset is something that's going to provide future economic benefits. Is the BlackBerry going to provide the full future economic benefits that we anticipated in this situation? No, heck no. Right? So what we have to do is, if we're BlackBerry, we have to reduce the value of our inventory for what we actually expect we can get from selling these phones. All right, and so we have to perform what's called, or we have to record an entry, an adjusting entry that's called an inventory write-down. And basically what you do is you say, all right, in the balance sheet I have the value of these units of inventory at X, the real value is Y. I have to record an expense that reduces the value down to Y. Okay, that's what an inventory write-down is. You debit cost of goods sold, you credit inventory, and that reduces the value of your inventory on your balance sheet. Now, X was the cost that we have in the balance sheet currently. Y is the true value. How do we get Y? How do we know what Y is? How do we know what the true value of the inventory is? Well, it turns out GAAP has different methodologies for determining this. And there's actually two broad methods. The first is called the lower of cost or net realizable value. And we're going to use these methods or this method for FIFO or average cost or anything that's not LIFO or retail inventory. All right, so lower of cost or net realizable value, primarily we're going to use it for FIFO inventories. Now, if we're using LIFO inventory or retail inventory, we'll talk about the retail inventory method in a later video. But if we're using LIFO or the retail inventory method, we then have to use something called the lower of cost or market. And there are two different methods here of calculating that, what is the true value, that Y price. Remember I said X is the cost that we have recorded in the balance sheet. Y is the true value of the inventory. And so the lower of cost or net realizable value is a way of calculating the true value. The lower of cost or market is a way of estimating the true value. All right, so just two different ways of getting that true value number. All right, so we'll see how we apply these methods in a separate video. But conceptually, that's what an inventory write-down is. It's meant to reduce the value of our inventory in the balance sheet down to what it's really worth. All right, so hopefully you found this video helpful. I will see you very soon. Take care.